It's Palantir earnings day, everybody, and we have a lot to talk about. There has been a boatload of information released in not only the actual earnings report, but in some of the other comments that have been made in the letters to the shareholders. We have a lot to talk about here, everybody. So again, before we get into all of that information, if you guys wouldn't mind dropping a like down below, dropping a comment what your opinions are on Palantir's earnings that they have just released, and make sure that you guys subscribe for more videos like this and have those notifications turned on. But a little bit of a brief overview of what's happened in earnings today before we really dive deep into a lot of this information here is that what this earnings has done and what it really is at its core is what I like to call a base hit. It's not a home run, they didn't strike out, but this is a really solid stepping stone for where they're about to go in the future. Now, if you remember in the last video that I made, we were talking a lot about AIP. That is a very important part of this earnings call and Palantir's overall business going forward. So make sure you guys stick until the end. We have a lot of information to cover here, team, but without further ado, let's roll the intro. Now, guys, again, I do have the opportunity of a lifetime here for you. Trade1348.com, the absolute best place to come and get educated on how to properly learn to take advantage of these short-term moves in today's market, is still offering you guys that 1 month free deal with code GAINZ, G-A-I-N-Z. You get access to all of the proprietary predictive algorithms, the AI algorithms, the alert systems, but most importantly, the educational tools to help you guys have success in this market. You're going to see so much nonsense out there about people trying to ask you and get you to follow their alerts. That is never how you're going to have success in the market. You always have to know for yourself why you're entering, when you're going to exit on either side of these trades, and the reasons for doing so. If you guys are interested in joining, remember, we've had all those interviews out there. One of our members turning $8,000 into $1 million. Our 19-year-old superstar coming in and making over $100,000 in about 13 days. That interview is live on my channel. Remember, team, this offer's not going to last forever. So if you are interested, check out that link down below to trade1348.com. But let's get into the chart here a little bit and a little bit of an overview of what we've seen today. So I bet a lot of you guys were looking at this first candle here in getting a little bit worried. Remember, again, Palantir was up about, I believe, well, about 140% since their last earnings. So if they didn't really knock it out of the park this time, this candle would have been, we would have expected to see this. But when we actually take a deeper look into what Palantir has done in this earnings call and in this earnings report, you're going to see why they've started to bounce up in this after hours period here, being up around right now at the current time about 2.5%. So let's take a look at a couple of these numbers really quickly. So their Q2 adjusted EPS was about 5 cents, and that was about what was estimated as well. Their Q2 revenue was about 533 million, estimated 532 million. That's a beat. Q2 adjusted EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, 143.4 million, estimated 130 million. Big beat there. Now, this share buyback, we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's very interesting that they're suggesting this at these prices. Now, they've just authorized the share buyback. They're not actually going to be doing it right now. And if you guys do follow me over on Twitter, I did kind of give you guys a little bit of an insight as to why they're doing this here and the reasons, but we're going to break it down a little bit more in this video as well. They see the Q3 revenue at 533 million to 577 million. The estimate is about 533.4 million, so right around those expectations. Now, when we go through a little bit of an earnings comparison between what they did in Q2 of 2023 or Q1 of 2023 and Q2, well, we see some very key difference here. So the generally accepted accounting principles, that's what GAAP is, net income of 28 million. And when we come over here, the GAAP net income in Q1 was 17 million. Nice growth there. This marks our second consecutive quarter of positive GAAP income. And again, this is the third consecutive quarter of GAAP profitability. Very good to see. Is this a knock out of the park? Not necessarily, but again, like I said a little earlier in this video, a very nice base hit for Palantir. GAAP income from operations of 10 million, representing a 2% margin. Again, coming over here, GAAP income from operations of 4 million, representing a margin of 1% of 1,000 basis points year over year. Okay, well, when we come back here to Q2, again, this is the most current quarter, and Q1 is going to be the previous quarter. That is showing some very, very strong growth. Coming down a little bit further, this is probably one of the things that people were looking at the most. Commercial revenue grew 10% year over year to about 232 million. US commercial revenue grew 20% year over year to 103 million. Now, we're going to look at these on these graphs from their presentation in a little bit as well. And again, I apologize for this video probably being a little bit longer. If we really wanted to break down everything, this video would probably be an hour and a half long, but I want to make sure that you guys have the right information here going forward, because there's one or two things about this earnings call that I find incredibly important that we're going to get into in a second that not a lot of people realize, and was almost the main topic of the previous video that I posted on this channel here. Now, moving on, we can see that customer account grew 38% year over year and 8% quarter over quarter. Very good growth there, guys. Adjusted income from operations of 135 million, representing a margin of 25%. Cash from operations of 90 million, representing a 17% margin. We can go through and compare a lot of these things as well. But what I would like to talk about here with you guys is this buyback. So when we come over here and take a look at the letter from the CEO, we do have a couple of other things as well, but the buyback part is incredibly important. So the first thing that we need to talk about, let me see right here. We expect to remain profitable on both a quarterly and annual basis this year. As a result, we anticipate that we will become eligible for inclusion in the S&P 500 after we report our financial results for Q3 2023 in early November. When Palantir gets S&P inclusion, they are most likely going to see a pretty significant uptick in their share price as more demand starts to come in. So remember what we've been talking about, guys, with this stock, that yes, it's very, very tradable in the short term. And I've shown you guys that with the tools of Trade1348.com, those 200% call gains and those over 100% call gains that I've shown you guys over the past month and a half or so. But overall, as a long-term investor in this company, you have to be very aware of the catalysts that are actually going to send this stock up over the long term. And that is going to be repeated solid earnings. This was a solid earnings report right here, as we're going to continue to go through. But again, this S&P inclusion is interesting, but they have authorized a share buyback of about $1 billion. Now, why would they do this? Well, we take a look at the weekly time frame on Palantir here. Well, we were seeing this stock trade back in December of 22, sub 10, sub 8, sub 7 at the $6 area. Now, if Palantir really wanted to make the most out of their buyback, well, they would have been buying back their shares down in this range before this movement to the upside, right? Well, there's a couple of reasons why they may not have wanted to do that. They may have been waiting for those profitability metrics to come in order to not almost spook Wall Street into saying, what the heck is this company doing, buying back shares of their own stock when they're not even profitable yet? But the other couple of things that I really, really want to go over is, well, kind of the adverse scenario here. Now, I don't think this is the most likely outcome, but it's possible that Palantir, the organization, is saying that they think the stock in the short term is going to go a little bit lower, and they're going to be able to buy back these shares at a lower price. Do I think that's the most likely outcome? Not necessarily. Here is why. When we move back over to this letter from the CEO, remember, nobody was really talking about this AIP platform that was sort of discussed in the last earnings call, but was said was going to be a very key factor in this earnings call, which it absolutely is, as it's highlighted in a really large part in this letter to the shareholders here. So, we announced the release of our artificial intelligence platform, AIP, which allows large language models to operate within the confines of an enterprise on privately held data less than 3 months ago at their previous earnings. The platform already has users across more than 100 organizations, including some of the largest enterprises in the world from the healthcare, finance, automotive, and energy sectors. A scramble is taking place throughout the United States and around the world to deploy the software solutions that will allow institutions to domesticate the large language models that have thus far operated primarily in the wilds of the open internet. This is where it gets interesting right here. As a result, the demand for AIP is unlike anything we have seen in the past 20 years. We are currently in discussions with more than 300 additional enterprises to deploy AIP within their organizations, of which are searching for an effective and secure means of adapting the latest large language models for use on their internal systems and proprietary data. Now, again, you could say that a lot of these existing customers that Palantir has are going to be using AIP, or you could come out and say that there's going to be 300 additional consumer enterprises that are going to be or customers that are going to be using this platform here. Either way, that's a debate to be had, but when they say that the demand for AIP is unlike anything we have seen in the past 20 years, remember, Palantir has been a pretty successful company, not in terms of their financials, but in terms of what they've been able to produce for the market over the last 20 years of their existence. So when they say this is probably what they're betting on with this share buyback that they have released. So overall, guys, when we take a look going over here, I believe it's down in here, when we scroll back up in this presentation page, what is going to be the next very, very key date for Palantir here? Well, AIPCon, September 14th, 2023. Now, when we come over to these pages a little bit here, I have a couple of page notes on my phone here that I want to go through with you guys. AIP is probably the one thing that you guys really need to pay attention to the most because of the fact, again, they're offering this share buyback now, which doesn't necessarily make the most sense when they're trading at these inflated valuations, and they're saying that the demand is incredibly high. So page 6 over here, again, we're going to be continuing to talk about AIP, scrolling back up a little bit more. AIP Con highlighting our new platform, AIP. We have Cisco, JD Power, Cleveland Clinic, Jacobs, Panasonic Energy, HCA Healthcare, Lockheed Martin, very, very big in the defense space, RBC, Dish, PwC. Now, these are the companies that have been listed right now, but remember, there's potentially 300 more. Now, there's a lot of amazing things about this. Now, coming down a little bit further, we just did the page 14 one, and then I also want to briefly touch upon before I send you guys on your way, and I actually might make a second video for you guys breaking down Palantir's earnings here because there's just so much information here. This is a very complex technological company and data analytics company that there's a lot of different moving parts that I want to make sure that you guys have kind of the overall view going forward and what's important to actually keep a lookout for. So scrolling down a little bit further, the last page that I have here, page 18. So right here, page 18, U.S. commercial revenue growth. Remember, guys, we were talking a lot when I used to talk about Palantir back in the day about their concentration of government revenue. So right now, we see that the U.S. government growth in the United States, remember, was growing at about 10%. Now, the U.S. commercial revenue growth growing at about 20%. And as you can see, 103 million in Q2 of 2023, in the government revenue was about 225 million. So we are seeing that diversification of their client base, which is what institutional investors need to see in order to continue to pour money into this stock. And it's also going to help with S&P inclusion as well. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have overall growth, worldwide growth. So government revenue growth was up 15% and commercial revenue growth was up 10%. Now, what I would like to see, again, is commercial revenue growth outpacing government revenue growth. They're pretty close, but again, in the United States, it did outpace. So I would say this one's kind of a wash here for me. Personally, I do want to see that diversification a little bit more, but we are seeing that. Remember, this is not some sort of home run earnings, but it is a very, very nice base hit. Now, guys, the last thing that I want to touch upon with you guys is, again, another one of those key factors that people on the outside looking in used to like to point to as one of the reasons why they wouldn't want to invest in Palantir, and that is stock-based compensation. Remember, we've made videos about this in the past, how stock-based compensation is treated as an expense under generally accepted accounting principles. So if you have really high stock-based compensation, it's a lot harder for these companies to get to profitability because, well, if it's an expense, it's going to go against your revenue. It's going to be harder to get that profitability metric. Now, coming over here, remember, this is the page for Palantir's Q1 earnings. So for the 3 months ended March 31st, we had about 114 let's see here. I believe that's 114 million in stock-based compensation here. Yeah, that's 114 million. Sorry. And in 2022, for the 3 months ended March 31st, 149 million. When we come back over here, to what we're seeing right now for the 3 months ended June 30th, well, we have 114 million. That is a significant decrease, especially compared to revenues. So when we think about this company holistically and where this is moving in the future, a lot of these metrics are moving in the right direction. Now, is this in earnings that's going to cause this stock to go absolutely insane? In my opinion, not necessarily. But as I have said throughout this video, this is a really nice base hit. And as they kind of say in the world of baseball, base hits are going to win the game, guys. As long as you can get on base and continue to get that low-hanging fruit, you're going to be all right. Now, again, let's go back very, very quickly and talk briefly about this stock and where it could potentially go over the next couple of trading days. Well, after earnings, stocks are typically going to be incredibly volatile. Remember, we do have CPI data coming out on Thursday, which is going to be and bring some volatility to the overall market. At the current time right now, we have held this 13 EMA on the daily. We are bouncing back up here to where this blue line is showing. It's a little bit hard to see. But again, we are going to need to wait for the dust settle tomorrow and throughout the end of this week to really see where this stock wants to go moving forward. But as long-term investors, guys, remember, dollar cost averaging is going to be your friend. If I do see an opportunity in this stock, I will let you guys know. So team, that is going to wrap it up for this one. Remember, make sure you guys are getting your 1-month free trial with the code GAINZ, GAINZ, on trade1348.com. Other than that, everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Peace.